It's really an honor, a schos, and a great merit to be here this evening. I think back many, many years ago to the great Rav that you have, Rabbi Shoshan. And when I saw the name that he chose for the shul, Avas Torah, it wasn't surprising that that would be the name, the love of Torah. But there was one other name that I thought perhaps he would choose. And that would be Avas Yisrael, the love of the Jewish people. Because I want to tell you a story about your great Rav over here. When I came to the yeshiva, I was coming from Los Angeles and from Eretz Yisrael. I didn't know a single soul that was there. And as can be in large yeshivas, sometimes it's a little bit cold. Not everybody comes and says hello to you. Not everybody welcomes you. Not everybody is warm to you. And Rabbi Shoshan once got up at a Shabbos Suda in front of the entire yeshiva. And it bothered him that not everybody was as friendly as they could be with one another. So he said, Rabbi Sai, I want to teach you the way that we are supposed to greet another bacher, another boy learning in the yeshiva. And he said, I'm going to give you an example. And he said, Shalom Aleichem. My name is Ariel Shoshan. Welcome to Yeshivas Ner Yisrael. What is your name? And he said, that's the way that we have to be, so warm and so loving and so kind. So when I came here today, without even a single person, maybe one or two people was here when I first arrived, the warmth that is in this shul, the achdus, the unity that is in this shul, the friendship, the goodness that is here, it's already when you walk in the doors, you can feel it. You can feel it palpitating in the air. And that comes from the great Rav that you have, Rabbi Shoshan, and the tremendous cast of Rabbanim that he put together here that are all dedicated to the same cause of spreading the light of Torah, the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's godliness, and the achdus, the unity of Klal Yisrael. So what better place for me to be on a night like this, only a couple of days before Yom Kippur is going to come, where everybody's looking for chizuk, for some kind of inspiration. I have to tell you, I've been more inspired already in the couple of hours that I'm here than perhaps you'll walk away with tonight. But we'll try, be'ez Hashem. There is a world-famous question that is asked about the Yomim Noraim. And the question is that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is setting up the calendar, why did he make Rosh Hashanah before Yom Kippur? If I'm Kel Moli Rachamim, I'm the God of mercy, I'm compassionate, I'm benevolent, and I'm coming to judge my nation, all of my people. So why should I judge them on a Rosh Hashanah that comes at the tail end of last year? Last year was filled with all of our mistakes, all of our averas, all the shortcomings, all the deficiencies, all the things that we did wrong. Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu give us first a Yom Kippur? We'll come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we'll plead, please, Rebbeinu Shalom, forgive us for everything we did wrong in the previous year. And once that Hashem is meichel us, He forgives us for all that we did wrong, then we have a clean slate. We look nice and clean, like when that kid comes in from the playground, he's filthy, dirty. And the mother says, upstairs right now. She can't even look at him until he goes into the bath and washes himself off, and then he comes downstairs. His hair is squeaky clean. His face is clean. He's wearing nice pajamas. He's got a smile on his face. Then the mother will give that kid anything he wants. So why doesn't Hashem wait? Let us get squeaky clean over Yom Kippur, get forgiven for all the averas that we did, and then on Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, judge me for a good year. Give me bracha, parnasa, brius, give me health. Let me have all of the good things that you want to bring down from Shemayim. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't do that. He made purposely a Rosh Hashanah and then a Yom Kippur. What is the judgment of Rosh Hashanah, and what are we to gain between then and Yom Kippur? So the Ali Shur writes, without going into all of the details, that the judgment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made for us on Rosh Hashanah was not a judgment that was examining all of the deeds of what we did last year. And it's not a judgment where he's looking into the future. He knows how we will end up making mistakes in the future. It's impossible. A person won't make mistakes. But rather, the din, the judgment of Rosh Hashanah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked inside of our hearts. And he looked inside of our souls. And he saw the purity of the neshama of Klal Yisrael, of a Jew. And he judged you on Rosh Hashanah for how close you are deciding in your mind and your heart and your soul to live together with Hashem for this up and coming year. How much kirvas Elokim, how much closeness to the Rebbeinu Shalom does a person want in this year of 5783? And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked inside and he saw your sincerity, I'm sorry I'm telling you this after Rosh Hashanah, but he saw your sincerity and he saw your kedusha and he saw your desire to want to be close to him, to have what we call kirvas Elokim, closeness to the Rebbeinu Shalom, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that is exactly the kind of a person that I want to have in the world for the up and coming year. Someone who understands the mission of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. When a person walks out of Rosh Hashanah, one of the ideas that is in their mind is that the most valuable relationship that I have in my life is the relationship between me and the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that's the most, thank you, that's the most important thing. And if I will just work, and I will strengthen, and I will value the kesher nafshi, the spiritual connection between me and the Rebbeinu Shalom, the Master of the universe, and I will do everything that I possibly can to make it count, to make it real, to make it lasting, to make it endearing and loving. So then I begin to recognize that everything that I did wrong this past year, every aveira, every sin, every act that I know was not seen with grace in the eyes of Hashem, it all comes to damage the precious and the valuable relationship, the love affair that we have with the Rebbeinu Shalom. First, you need to appreciate what it means to be wed to Hashem, and then you can begin to do tshuva, you can begin to repair the damage of the previous year. There are certain people in their marriages that the bond of love is so close, and the unity is so dear to the two of them, that you could have a husband on one side of the world, you could have a wife who's on the other side of the world, but it's as if they are standing right next to each other. One of the great losses that we had in Klal Yisrael this year was Rav Uri Zohar. He was, when we talk about tshuva, he was the paradigm example of what tshuva, of what it means to come back to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He was a man who was a Hollywood movie star in Israel, in movies, in TV, in radio. He was well known throughout the entire country. And he was very much known not to like the religious world. But one day his eyes were opened, his heart was ignited, his neshama began to soar, and slowly but surely became a full-fledged Baal Tshuva, 100% religious. And until the end of his life, we're talking about a man who lived such a life of Kedusha. He would sit in talis and tefillin half of a day just learning Torah. His words out of his mouth were only holy words. His whole mannerisms, everything. I was zeicher to be in his house maybe 30 years ago for his Shabbos. It's indelible memories etched in my mind of what I saw in that house. About 20-something years ago, he came to Los Angeles. And he was staying by the house of a very, very wealthy man in Los Angeles. Has a house, probably the size, 5 times the size, 10 times the size of this room of this shul over here. And Uri Zohar was coming from a very small, little, tiny apartment the size of a box. And he arrives in Los Angeles. These are prehistoric days. People didn't have cell phones back then. And he gets to the house, and the wealthy man says, Rabbi, is there anything I can get you? And he says, could I please use your telephone? And this is the wealthy man telling over the story. He says, Uri Zohar takes the telephone, and he goes into a corner, and he calls his wife. His wife's in Eretz Yisrael, and he's there in this palatial estate in Los Angeles. He said the way in which Uri Zohar spoke to his wife, the love, the warmth, the jokes, the connection, was a level of shalom bayis, this man said, that he never ever saw in his life. You could be on one side of the world, your wife could be on the other side of the world, but you could be like this. On the other hand, there are marriages, unfortunately, where a husband and a wife could be in the most intimate moments of marriage, and they couldn't be farther apart from each other. Rosh Hashanah is the Yom, is the day that a person begins to realize for themselves, I want to make sure that me and the Rebbeinu Shalom, we are like this. And anything that I did last year, all my mistakes, the sins that I did, the stumblings that I had, I realized it makes us like this. Because sin is richuk, it's distance. Tshuva is bringing us closer together. So as we sit on the eve of Yom Kippur, and we think to ourselves how valuable it is to be close to the Rebbeinu Shalom. Everybody in this room knows no one's making an overhaul this year on Yom Kippur. No one's going to walk out of this shul, I'm sure after the Rav's elevating the Elah, where he's probably screaming at the top of his lungs, Hashem, Hu Elokim. And you have goosebumps running up and down your arms and your spine. And you're committing yourself, I'll be a better person, Hashem, I promise I'm going to do better, I'll do better, I'll do better. Until you come home that night and you are starving and you see that there's not a morsel of food on the table. Then the screaming begins. Then the name calling begins. Don't you know how long I was davening in shul for you today? Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let's be honest with ourselves. No one's going to have a super transformation over the Yom Kippur. We're going to improve. We're going to grow. We're going to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be'ez Hashem. But when you wake up the morning after Yom Kippur and you look in the mirror, you thought you lost like 10 pounds. Yes or no? It's going to be the same exact body the next day. The same face. Davening might be a little bit better. Your midos might be a little bit more on target. But ultimate change, a full change, that's a lifetime of avodah, a lifetime of work. So where do we start? Where does a person begin to take the right steps for change? So one of the beautiful tefillahs that we say in our davening of Rosh Hashanah, in the Zichronos of Musav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that I'm looking at judging every single person. I'm seeing if they fulfilled their mission. And then he writes, V'alalilois mitzadei gover. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm watching to see and I'm judging the footsteps of man. What does it mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is judging the footsteps of man? So one of the Mefarshim, one of the commentators on the Machzor, the Avodas Yisrael, says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu examines kol psiya upsiya, every single step that a person takes in this world last year. Afilu psiyos ketanos, even the smallest steps that a person took, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is watching, He's judging, and He's taking note of. Which means for us that we always think that our actions have to be grand. They have to be big. They have to be life-altering. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'm not asking you to change your whole life around on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. I'm not asking you to make changes that are way above and beyond what you can handle. I'm asking for psiyos, ketanos, small, little steps that you're going to take and move in the right direction. And if a person begins in that way, and they value the little steps that we take in the right direction, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is already judging those as giant leaps of faith for each and every one of us. There's a beautiful story that I heard recently about a ger, about a convert. And they asked him once, what was it that you saw in Judaism that made you want to convert? As I heard that Rabbi Shoshan spoke about conversion on the Shabbos Shuvah drasha, so you all know conversion is a major commitment. I was one thing my whole life. I was not a Jew, and I transformed myself to becoming a Jew. What did you see in Judaism that made you want to become a Jew? So the man didn't even have to think. And he answered, I saw the way the Jewish people tie their shoes. The way they tie their shoes? That's what made you become a Jew? He said, yes. You know how a Jew puts on their shoes? Right foot, left shoe, tie the left, tie the right. So they said to him, okay, I understand you went to a Shabbos in Avas Torah, and you saw the warmth and the vibrancy of what Yiddishkeit is all about. And you heard an inspiring drush, you had a nice l'chaim and some good cholent afterwards. You saw how good it is to be a Jew. I understand. That's probably what made you frum. Maybe you came here when the rabbi was painted like Ronald McDonald on Purim one year. And you saw the simcha of what Torah is all about and what Purim is all about. I could understand that would make you frum. Maybe it was a Hanukkah, the lights of the menorah enlightening one's life. But because of the way that the Jewish people tie their shoes, that's what made you frum? And he said, yes, it's very simple. He said, because I looked into all different religions in my life. And I realized that if the God of the Jewish people cares so much about His relationship with us, that even when we are tying our shoes in the morning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to think about Him, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to be there involved with us. That is the God that I want in my life. It's the very little things that a person does in their life that create the connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's another story that is similar to this. This goes back many, many years. There was a Rav in some small, out-of-town boondock place. I would say Scottsdale, but this is not the boondocks. This is the vibrancy of Torah over here. So there was a Rav that was there. He moved into town, and his whole objective was to be Makor of as many Jews as he possibly could. There was a wealthy man who lived in the neighborhood, and he tried very hard to get this man to come to his shiurim. Every time he calls, oh, I'm busy, dinner, this, I'm busy, meeting, I'm going on vacation, I have to go to my other house, I'm too busy. And it goes on like this for years. Every time he calls the man, he has another excuse. One day the Rav is sitting with a small chabur, a small group of men, and they're learning the halachas of the Beis HaKisei. Those are the laws of the way in which a Jew will go to the restroom. We will not go into the details this evening. Suffice to say, it's very detailed in halacha how it's supposed to be. He's in the middle of teaching over the halachas, And suddenly the door to the shul opens up, and in walks the wealthy man that he's been trying to get into his classes for the last several years. And the man begins to think to himself, I can't believe it. Of all nights to come, this is the night that he comes. So he says, you know what, maybe I'll switch gears. I'll start giving a shir on the Parsha. He'll never know that I was teaching something else. I'll give on the Parsha. He says, no, maybe something from the Ramchal, Kabbalah, mysticism. But then he says to himself, if Hashgacha has granted that this man walked into shul after all these years at this exact time and night, and these are the laws and this is the Torah that I'm teaching, then I'm not changing. That's what Hashem wants him to hear. Say, welcome, man, come, sit down, please. What are you learning? Oh, we're just learning the laws about the bathroom. Come, sit down, please. And he sits down, and he keeps teaching detail for detail, the same way that he was before. Now, when you're a rabbi, or you're a teacher, you're a speaker, sometimes when you're saying things, you look at people's faces, you're wondering, what in the world is that person thinking right now? So he's watching this man the entire time. He's wondering, what is this man thinking? The shir is over. Everybody packs out. And the wealthy man remains. And he says to him, Rabbi, if this is what Torah and Judaism is all about, then this is something I need to dedicate my life to. The rabbi looks at him, and the man explains, I have spent many years studying alternative religions, and I came to the following conclusion. Every religion has what they call their sacred moments, their holiness and sanctity. And all sanctity exists in places like their temples, at their holidays, in their classes, at celebrations. But in every single religion, there's always plenty of room where holiness and sanctity cannot exist. And you are telling me that in our religion, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants is that even inside of the bathroom, a Jew is supposed to remind himself who he is, that there's even Kiddush over there? This is the kind of religion I want to be a part of. And the man became a Baal Tshuva as a result of such an event. Because the Ribono Shel Olam cares so much about us. And he loves us so much that he always wants to be close. When we come to the days of Aser Simei Tshuva and Yom Kippur, we're trying to remind ourselves that Hashem wants us close. How close do we want to be to Hashem? How much do we value the relationship, the marriage that exists between us and the Ribono Shel Olam? And as Rav Wolbe writes, every chait that a person did last year created a distance and a wedge between us and Hashem. So on Yom Kippur, what are we trying to do? We're trying to repair the damage that we did. We are trying to bring ourselves back to Hashem. We're trying to lift ourselves up to a level that perhaps has never existed before for us in our lives. And the only way to do it is one little step at a time. You can't jump. You can't make massive changes. But you could continue to move in the right direction. The Michtav Eliyahu Rav Dessler, he says over a fascinating idea of all of the Avos HaKadoshim, our forefathers that had a premonition, a dream. We see in the dream of Yaakov Avinu that he had a sulam mutzav arza. There was a ladder that was on the ground. V'roisha egiya shemayim, and the head of that ladder was into the heavens. And our sages explained to us the ladder is a symbol of the neshama of Yaakov Avinu, and that which was standing on top of the ladder was the Shechina, and Yaakov's job was to get up more and more higher on the ladder to be able to bask in the glory of the Shechina. Ask us the following question. Yaakov Avinu is known as the Bechir Shaba'avos. He is the most praiseworthy of all of the forefathers. He was the one that fought Lavan for all those years. He's the one that had 12 pristine children. He is the one that was able to overcome all the adversity and rise to the challenge again and again and again. He was the biggest emes of truth that there was of all the forefathers. If Yaakov Avinu wants to grow in this world, he wants to go to a new level, a new sphere of ruchnius, of spirituality, he should be able to go straight to the top. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he gives him the mashal of what his life is, it's only a sulam, it's a ladder. Says Rav Dessler, Ramiz lo Hashem Yisbarach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was hinting to him, Shelo yuchol la'alois, you cannot go up. Elederech hamadregoi shel hasulam, you can only go up the ladder one rung at a time. You can't jump, you can't leap, but you could climb the ladder, step by step, rung by rung. And how does it work? You go up, you get your legs sturdy on one rung, you pull the other leg up there to make sure that you are firm. And then you go to the next one. Then you go to the next one. In Yiddishkeit, the only way that we can grow is when we are firm, and we are solid, and we are strong in the steps and the levels that we are growing in. And as we approach the day of Yom Kippur, and we are planning in our mind, what are we going to show HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How are we going to get close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu this year? There's only one way. And that is small, concerted, committed, courageous steps that a person is going to take to be able to bring ourselves close to the Ribbono Shel Olam. There is a statement that was said in the name of the Arizal. He had a student whose name was HaChaim Vital. And HaChaim Vital was once complaining to his Rabbi. He said, how can I say that my neshama is coming from the same places as the earlier generations? How can I know that I find favor in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? In the earlier generations, when they would learn Torah, fire would come down from the heavens. When they would say a bracha, the bracha came true. Who am I, said Reb Chaim Vital? We're going back 500 years to the times of the Arizal, the greatest Kabbalist. And the Arizal told him the following words. He says, "Da, you should know, ki gedulos hanefesh eina teluya k'fi ma'isa adam." The greatness of your nefesh, of your soul, is not based upon the actions of man, rak k'fi hazman v'hador hahu, but rather based upon the generation that you are living in. Ki ma'isa katan ma'oid, even a very small action, b'dor hazeh, in this generation, shokol kekama mitzvos b'doros harishonim, it equals many mitzvahs that would have been in a previous generation. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks down on Scottsdale, Arizona, he has a lot of nachas, that is for sure. And he sees you in the morning, trying to get up out of bed, trying to make it to shul on time. It's hard these days. Slicha is very tough. Get there early, so we can say Ashrei together, say Kaddish together. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees you make the effort to pull yourself out of bed. You turned off the alarm. You pulled your legs over the side of the bed. You look at the alarm, you realize, if I get out of bed right now, I'll be able to make it there for the beginning of Slichos. However, somehow you got frozen in time over there. Then you look at the clock again, if I'll just get out of bed right now, at least I'll make it for part of Slichos. But you're still frozen. Then you say, well, if I get out of bed right now, maybe I'll miss slichos, but at least I'll make it for shacharis. And you make it for shacharis. When you walk into the shul, you miss slichos, you made it for shacharis. HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls all of his malachim, his angels in Shemaim, and he says, take a look at Scottsdale, Arizona over there. Look at that yid that dragged himself out of his bed to come to shacharis. You know what he could have done? I missed slichos, I missed the beginning, I missed the middle, I missed the end. Forget about davening altogether. But he went to davening. Wow. That's a great man. That's a great person. Because I don't measure a person based on previous generations. I measure them on where this generation is holding. And the smallest little things that a person does in this generation, ginormous, they're gigantic in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if you commit yourself on Yom Kippur this year, you got to start now. To start right now doing a Sesame at Tshuva. If you're making commitments to small steps towards Hashem, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, it's one small step for mankind. It's very, very big in the eyes of the Rebbeinu Shalom. It's a very beautiful Maisa, a very beautiful story that I saw recently about a young girl who walked into a jewelry store, a very high-end jewelry store in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. And she walks in and she's looking around, and the man behind the counter, the owner of the store, is watching her. She's browsing through, perusing everything that's there. And her eyes lock on a very expensive tennis bracelet, which cost about $3,000 or $4,000. And the girl starts pointing. And the man walks over and he says, can I help you? And she says, yes, I want to buy that bracelet. He says, really? He says, who do you want to buy the bracelet for? She said, I want to buy the bracelet for my sister, our older sister. You want to buy the bracelet for your older sister? Why? She looks down for a moment and then she says, we don't have a father or a mother in our house anymore. And our older sister has taken over the family, and she's raising us. She's not even so old herself. So all of the siblings who got together, we want to show her how much hakaras of gratitude we have for her. We want to buy her a gift. I want to buy her that bracelet. The man was very touched, and he says to the young girl, how much money do you have? She says, no, don't worry, I've been saving up for a long time. She reaches into her pocket, and she pulls out 7 shekel and 80 agarot. Even before inflation, and the dollar was so low, this is not a lot of money. It's maybe $2. And the man looks at the young lady and he says, would you believe it? That's exactly what the bracelet costs. Here's a card, write a note to your sister, I'm going to make it more shiny than it is now, and then you'll bring this beautiful gift to your sister. He goes to his shining machine, he polishes it up, puts it in a beautiful box, shows the girl how sparkly it is, closes the box, puts the card on top, and he wipes a tear away from his eye, and he says to the young girl, go please, bring this to your sister. A few hours later, the door to the shop opens up, and an older girl walks in, and she's holding in her hand this bracelet in the box. And she walks right over to the owner and she says, sir, I'm so embarrassed. My sister told me what she did. She came here, she bought this bracelet. I can see from the value it's very expensive. I'm sure that my sister doesn't even have $10 to her name. She could not have paid for it. And the man looks at the young lady and he says, you're wrong. She gave me the exact price of the bracelet. 7 shekel, 80 agarot, and a broken heart. And the man starts to cry. And he says, I'm an alman. I'm a widower. I lost my wife several years ago. This is my store. People come in every day, they're buying things for their wives, they're buying things for their children. And they have the money to spend, and it's not a big deal. They put it on the credit card, they give me the cash, they write a check, and they buy everything. Your sister came in so pure, so beautiful, so sincere, with all of her heart. She says she wants to buy this for you because she cares so much about you. He said, I have not felt love in my life in years since my wife died. For the first time in years, I feel what it means to have love in my heart again. Please, take the bracelet, enjoy the bracelet, and go and raise your siblings the way that you are. There's a Rabbi in Eretz Yisrael that when he heard this story, he said, Rabbi, we come to the Rebbeinu Shalom every single year, Yom Kippur, and we're begging, Zachreinu l'chaim, remember me for life. Kasveinu l'chaim, write me in the book of life. What can we offer HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So we make a little commitment over here. I'll try to come to shul on time. I'll take out the trash without my wife asking me on Motzi Shabbos from now on. I will make sure that I'm not the one that they have to beg to come and do the chesed and set up the table in the back. So the rabbis have to do it every time before every shiur. I'll come early and I'll set up the table. I'll do my best, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's small. What can I offer Hashem? And Hashem says, you think that it's small? Do you know how I've been waiting for you all year? You know I've been waiting for every little step that you take? How much I love you, Klal Yisrael, how much I care about you when you come close? The littlest things that a person does are giant acts of love in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore it's so meaningful. And Hashem says, just like this man gave the bracelet to the family, I'll shower you with bracha this year, parnasa this year, children this year, refuah this year, shidduchim this year. What do you need? Everybody needs something. Whatever you need. Just show HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, I care about you. I value our relationship. There's nothing more important to me in my life. I want to end with one last word, one last idea. 21 years ago, for a short time, I was in Eretz Yisrael learning in the Mir Yeshiva. And I had the schus 1 year during the Yasser Semei HaTshuva to go to the great Rav Yaakov Hillel. Rav Yaakov Hillel today is probably known throughout the world as the greatest Kabbalist of our generation, master of all of the writings of the Arizal. But the amazing thing about him is that he is so normal and he is so down to earth. He can communicate the deepest ideas so that every single person will be able to understand. And we were sitting in his little office, a small group of us. And he gave us a Musar Shmuz that I will never forget. And he said over the following words in the Midrash, in Shir HaShirim, which probably everybody here is well aware of. And the Midrash says like this, Rav Yesa Omar, Rav Yesa said over the following, Omar Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem says the Yisrael to the Jewish people, Bonai, my children, Pischuli Pesach Echad Shel Tshuva Kechudah Shel Machat, open up for me a hole of tshuva in your hearts, the size of a needle's eye. Va'ani paiseach lachem psachim, I will open for you openings. Shu'agolois u'koroniois nichnasais bo, that large caravans and carriages will be able to ride through. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you could make a hole inside of your heart, inside of your life, inside of your mind, inside of your soul, the size of a needle's eye, to show me that that's how you want to do tshuva, I will open that up so wide, you'll be able to fit all of the brachas of this year inside of there. asked Rav Yaakov Hillel the following question. Could you find a smaller hole in the world to make? HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving any mashal, any parable that he wants over here. Make for me the size of a hole in a doorway. Do something. Make me the size of a hole in a wall. Do something. The size of a needle's eye. Anybody ever try to thread a needle? It's not easy. Try to get it in there. It's not easy. Lick a little bit more. No, it doesn't go. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, if you do that, so small, it matters so much to me, I'll open it wide. Said Rabbi Yaakov Hillel, you know what the pshat is? The explanation is that a needle is made out of metal. And the hole that's in that needle's eye, is made out of metal. It's permanent. And if the Ribono Shel Olam sees during this time of the year that the little tiny hole that you're making inside of yourself is with permanence, with dedication, with continuity, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, that is major in my eyes. And then I'll open it up bigger and wider and larger and grander. And whatever we need to fit inside of you this year, whatever brachos you need, whatever siyata d'shemaya you need, whatever help you need from the Ribono Shel Olam this year, which everybody does need, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'll just keep opening and opening and expanding what is there. And that's something that everybody could do. It's not big. You know, in Los Angeles, they have all these places where people go and they get, I don't know, facelifts, makeovers. There used to be a store near my house called The New You. The New You. You change what HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. That's the new you. He gave you a big Jewish nose. That's how it is. He gave you ears. What can you do? That's the way that we look. You want to make the new you? The new you is when you begin to make a little hole and you take little steps and you keep walking every single day when it's hard. We had a great Rabbi in Ner Yisrael whose name is Rav Shraga Neuberger. And Rav Shraga used to say every year during this time of the year, what should a person take upon themselves? How do you know what to take upon yourself to become better for the up and coming year? He said 2 things you have to work on. Number 1, take the biggest struggle that you have in Yiddishkeit, in Torah and in mitzvahs, and commit to doing something small, but to improve your situation in that area. And the second thing, take your strongest strength in Torah and mitzvahs, the thing that you excel in the most. Maybe it's chesed, maybe it's davening, maybe it's learning, maybe it's kavod, maybe it's giving honor and respect to the rabbanim, maybe it's shalom bayis, maybe it's chinuch habanim. Whatever is your best quintessential mitzvah in your life, make a commitment to make it even better this year. And if you're doing that, so then you're always at the same time, I'm working on my weakness, but I'm working on my strength. And then you'll never feel defeated, because you'll always be growing. Little steps. A person does that during this time of the year. They come on Yom Kippur, I promise you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm going to try my best to make the permanent steps for the up and coming year. How could HaKadosh Baruch Hu say no to you? How could He not give you another year of life? How can He not fill you up with whatever it is that you're asking for? Because that's why we're here, to be close to Hashem, and you'll be the person who shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu how dear and important and meaningful the relationship is between you and Hashem. I want to leave off, if I have the time, with one more story. And with this we'll conclude. And this, I have to say something Hasidish for the Ruv. So at least the Hasidish Maisa I could tell. The story goes back exactly to the day, 1938. So we're talking about, someone do the math, close to 84 years ago, something. talking over 80 years ago to the day. It was the second to the last day of Slichos, which we'll say tomorrow, in the town of Belz in Europe. And tomorrow morning, those of you that will get out of the frozen mode at 6:30 and you'll come to Slichos, you'll see that we say over the Yud, what, 6:30? 6. It's nothing. We daven at 5:50. Okay. So tomorrow morning you will see in the Slichos that there's a whole part that is dedicated to the Yud Gimel Midos Rachamim, the 13 attributes of mercy. And every year, on that day of Slichos, the Belzer Rav, the Rav Aaron of Belz, had a very hallowed and sacred tradition. He would light certain candles, and each candle would be for a different neshama, a different person that was struggling, that he felt needed what he called the Or Aganus, the hidden light of the new year coming up that would help to elevate the neshama. And it was a very private gathering that was there. And yet every year, a few people were able to make it inside. And this particular year, Meir the Shoichet and his 6-year-old son, Baruch, came along. So they walk into the room, and the Rav, the Rebbe, and the Rebbitzin are there, and they have all these candles that are set up. And they are lighting the candles, and this little kid, an innocent little child, he sees the great Belzer Rebbe lighting candles, and he says, "Rebbe, who's that candle for?" And the Rebbe says, "Oh, this is for a Yid, had a very hard year. He needs some more Siyata D'Shemaya this year. We're lighting it for him." And then the Rebbe goes to light the next candle. "Rebbe, who's that for?" And the Gabbayim that are there are already trying to quiet the kid down, and the Rebbe says, "It's okay, it's okay." "Rebbe, who's that for?" They say, "Oh, this is for a Jew who's going to have a difficult year. He needs special Siyata D'Shemaya to overcome his challenges." And the boy is watching, he's following the Rebbe everywhere. "Rebbe, who's that for?" And this time the Rebbe grabs the little boy's finger, and he smiles and he says, This one is for a Yid in a place in America that you've never heard of before, called San Francisco. And it's for his neshama when he will need the light of Kedusha the most in his life." End of the story. Meir and his son Baruch leave. 1938, you all know the history. The Nazis, Yimach Shemam, came into Belz. They wiped out, eradicated the city. Somehow this little boy was a young boy at the time of the war. He survived the concentration camps. When the war was over, he lost everything. His father, his mother, his siblings, his family, his chassidas, gone. And he lost his connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. He was a very angry, traumatized young man. He came over to America. He met a young lady. She wasn't Jewish. He said, "Who cares? Judaism means nothing to me anymore." And they got married. They had children. And he lived his life for all of those years, decades and decades and decades. And suddenly Baruch, I don't know what his name was anymore, maybe it was Barry or Brian, he's walking down the street one day in his hometown in San Francisco. A 75-year-old man. And he doesn't know that today is Yom Kippur. And as he's walking down the street, he looks up and he sees a shul. And he feels something pulling him towards the shul. And he begins walking closer and closer. And he suddenly opens the door and he looks inside and he sees a sea of white, all the men in their kittel with the talesim drawn over their heads. He walked in around mincha time and he hears them davening, Omen Yesh Mei Rabbo. And suddenly he hears the tunes of the Yom Royim, and his mind is swimming with memories, swimming with emotions, swimming with pain. And the next thing he knows, he's bawling his eyes out inside of there. And then that little voice comes into his head and says, who are you kidding? You threw it all away a long time ago. You married a shiksa. You married a non-Jew. Your children aren't even Jewish. What are you going to change your life right now? Forget about it. But he's fighting himself, and he goes and he picks up a machzor. And he starts looking at the words in the machzor, and the memories of his childhood flood into his head, and he starts crying again and again. But that voice goes back in and says, get out of there. You can't do tshuva. It's too late for you. Get out of here now. And he closes the machzor. And he puts it down. And he starts to walk out of the shul. At the last minute, he looks back and he suddenly sees 2 candles lit. And he remembers what the Rebbe said in 1938. This candle is for a Yid in a place in America you never heard of before, called San Francisco, that will give him a light to his neshama at the time that he will need it the most. And he walked back into that shul, and he grabbed the machzor, and the Eilah was beginning, and he stayed there the rest of the day, and he davened the Eilah for the first time since he was a child. And this 75-year-old man who'd walked away from Yiddishkeit years before, from those first steps into that shul, became an emissary, a real, true Baal Tshuva as a result. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't look at the leaps that we take. He doesn't look how high we're going to jump, how many acrobatic moves we'll make to be frumer and better. The Ribbono Shel Olam cares about every little step that we take in our lives, because it shows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the most valuable thing in my life is my connection to you, Hashem. If it's from tying the shoes, to putting on your tefillin, to doing a chesed, to saying a tehillim, to davening a little bit more, to coming to 1 class a week, 1 more minute of guarding your mouth from saying lashon hara. If that's what it is, and that's what you take upon yourself, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you made a hole the size of a needle's eye, permanent. I will open it up so big and so wide and so expansive. All the brachas of 5783 Tavshin Pei Gimel, which we all want so desperately, I will bring them all into your life. May we be Zeichem Yetz Hashem, and together with your Choshev Rav and the Choshev wonderful Rabbanim that you have here to be mechazik, to elevate you and to lift you up, and the camaraderie and the achdus that is here, that is so unique and so warm and so beautiful to see. May we all commit ourselves this year on Yom Kippur to be better than we were last year, to be a better bride to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Someone that's going to find a lot of favor in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes, because when we make a commitment, we're serious about it, small, but concerted, tiny, yet with conviction, daily, constant, in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's eyes. It doesn't matter how big, it is big for him. May we be Zeichem Yetz Hashem to a year that we've never ever known before. As he makes the hole wider and wider and wider, you should all be signed and sealed and written for all good things this year. The Shana Tova Mesuka, not just a good year, but a sweet year. Everything that Hashem does is good, but it doesn't always taste so sweet. But when HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that we are trying to sweeten our relationship with him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us all the sweetest year that we have ever known. Thank you.
Just want to feel all